I was lucky enough to start my career on Wall Street, working on trading floors, and then was able to work with clients at a firm called Brown Brothers Harriman. What I found over a decade of doing this was a couple different things. The first one, I think at a high level, is whether you're a 22-year-old or an 18-year-old, day trading in your parents' basement, or the most sophisticated investor on Wall Street, everyone's focused on the wrong things. And so one thing that we're trying to do as a firm, and I'll talk about the firm a little later, is really give people the tools for them to focus on what actually matters when it comes to their lives and what's actually important to them at the end of the day. So why are we here? So this visual in many ways captures how some people, would speak about the American dream. You go to school, you get married, you buy a house, you have kids, you stay in one job, maybe two, and then you retire, right? That's the way it's supposed to go. Now, everyone in this room knows that that's not the case. This is how real life looks today, okay? It is not linear. While there are plenty of opportunities, the world has become increasingly complex around us with every passing generation. Now, this doesn't just go for the world we're in today, and it's not even a good thing or a bad thing, it just is. Any complex adaptive system trends towards complexity over time, okay? The problem is the education around how to make good decisions, particularly when it comes to your finances, has not kept up with the complexity over the last few generations. So, in this slide, you can see there's sort of two phases in life financially where you're accumulating wealth, you're doing everything you can to build that nest egg to get to retirement, to be financially secure, to be financially independent, and then you go into that distribution phase where you live off of those assets. Today, you go back and forth from those over the course of a year or two, right? So we have not given people the tools they need to make the decisions to allow them to live the life they want to. This is, I think, how most people view conversations with people like me, AKA an absolute nightmare, right? It's boring, it's jargony. You walk out feeling more stressed out than when you walked in many times, and you don't quite know how to feel. So what does this all lead to overall, right? More complex economic environment that we're living in. We have more complex decisions and more decisions to make, frankly, over the course of our lifespans than maybe we used to or our parents' or grandparents' generation did. And the financial industry stinks at addressing the problem, right? We're either incentivized in the wrong ways, we're more interested in sounding smart with our jargon maybe, or we want to sell you a product, right? So you have a misalignment or maybe multiple misalignments at the same time, and so people aren't equipped to make these decisions. So what is that leading to? What's the result? Everyone's freaking out. So in the workforce, and it's important that we talk about employers and institutions here because that's what this is aimed at, right? But in the workforce, you have 50% of employees saying they're stressed to the point of it being a distraction at work, right? So it's literally impacting the bottom line at a huge cost to the economy, to the businesses, and to the educational institutions, not only here, but across the country. And I think everyone here in their own way can identify with those numbers because everyone feels it in one form or another. Now, this is another survey, and it goes actually back before the pandemic. So they found that 50% of all people at prime working age of 21 to 62 are stressed at the idea of talking about money. We are not having conversations about it at the kitchen table with our kids. We are not having it in the break room at work, and we are not having it in the classroom at any level. And people don't feel good about it. Now, even worse is 60% of people are stressed thinking about money. So never mind having the productive conversation and feeling better about it, right? We don't even want to think about our money. So it's this financial avoidance is the term, and there's actually a term now, where we would rather be the ostrich sticking our heads in the sand and focus on our work, focus on our kids, and we let this problem sit in the back burner, and it leads to bad outcomes, okay? So as employers, everyone in this room has a stake, whether it's formally or informally, to make sure that our employees feel okay about their finances, because if they don't, they are going to leave. Now, they may just go hit the same problem financially when they find the next job, right? All of these behaviors, these habits, these things you need to understand about decision-making with finances, they're not going to be solved by a $10,000 or a $20,000 pay increase, right? These are foundational principles that aren't being taught. But if we are viewing this in terms of workforce development, in terms of developing talent and providing stability to our institutions, we need to make sure our people are okay financially. Do they feel okay? And if they don't, the math is clear. The numbers are clear. They are going to leave. So we talked a little bit in the last, in that breakout session after lunch, which I thought was incredible, even though Aaron Keating really scared me, about being proactive, right? Like not being reactive. So when you look at the challenges ahead, ask HR people in your company, ask anybody who's an employer making hiring decisions, what's the biggest thing that keeps them up at night? It's hiring and retention, and it's not a question, right? Now, as capital allocators and business owners, there's only so much you can pay your people, right? There's only so much you can do on that front. But what if you can help them make better decisions with what you are paying them? What if you can take away that anxiety about if they're going to be able to help their kids because they feel more confident in their future? They are going to stay. They're going to be more bought in. They're going to be more productive. And more importantly, they're going to be happier. So who are we? I'll step back and I want to talk about the firm because this is really important. If we're talking about leadership and innovation, this firm was started in 2017 by a group of people who came from Wells Fargo. Now, I was not one of them, but they immediately caught my eye, and I eventually joined the team years later. But if you talk about leadership and you talk about innovation, they made the leap to start an independent firm to do things differently than the big banks were doing it because they felt that that need was not being met. So we have two lines of business. First is personal wealth management for individuals and families, helping them manage those balance sheets, make those important decisions, invest their assets. Second one is interesting, and it's unrelated in many ways. It's helping business owners and employers manage their 401ks to be a tool for their employees to build wealth. Now, the common thread between these two businesses is that people don't feel confident in the decisions or the resources that they have at their disposal. And so that is where the Alliance Center for Investor Education was born. What is it? It is an educational resource within our firm where we partner with institutions, whether they be educational institutions or private employers, to come in and we teach employees the foundations of having financial confidence. So understanding you can't time the market. Understanding that your net worth is your assets minus your liabilities, and that's the number you need to focus on, not your income, not what kind of car you drive. So it's these foundational principles that we teach in depth, and Jill Murray's in the room today. She was able to give me the opportunity to build a lot of this curriculum with her students at Lackawanna, as a matter of fact. And so the thing is, it's not just the classroom. So we write every single week about things that are important to people making decisions at all different stages of life. But people don't learn just in the classroom. They don't learn just by reading, something that I know for my wife, who's a school counselor, like most of what I write every week is probably the worst thing she's ever had to read. And so what do we do? Well, we need different types of ways to engage in these conversations about good decision making. So we have a podcast. We meet with leaders and business owners, and we say, how did you make that important decision in your life? And we make that conversation vulnerable and open, because when I'm 25, when I'm 30, at these different stages, I'm looking at somebody who's done well for themselves and at a different stage in life, and I'm thinking they always had it figured out. It turns out none of us do, right? But how can we get better over the next 90 days? How can we make better decisions now for our kids so that in 5 years those good decisions will compound? It's by taking different elements of this educational resource and using it. So the third thing we do, and I think this is the most important, we do in-person learning. And so there's a number of organizations we partner with already that we'll go through. But our main event this year is about building this having a conversation around this generational divide, because I don't know about you, but like when my grandfather tells me to buy a savings bond because that's what worked for him, I don't really want to listen to that. He may not be wrong, but the environment has changed. And so we want to have a conversation from people of all different generations so that they can make decisions for themselves. Now, we go on site. We've done it with the Geisinger Medical School. We've done it with the Wilkes-Barre City Police Officers. We've done it at the University of Scranton School of Business, where we teach these foundations. We have that conversation. Now, what's kind of cool is what we're going to do next. We're going to roll out a self-paced learning program that we can implement within learning management systems for organizations to, after we have these conversations, we can allow people who are interested to then learn at their own pace, in their own style, in their own way, to help themselves feel better about their money, feel more confident, and make better decisions. So while the world around us continues to get more complex, it also continues to be focused on the short term. The job, in short, for the Center for Investor Education is to serve as a filter to what actually matters, which is remaining long-term, remaining rational, particularly in times of financial stress. And that is the goal here, is to partner with more institutions so we can do this for more people and make this conversation better. Because frankly, every time we do it, we learn something ourselves. We become better advisors for our clients. And hopefully we help people feel a little bit better too. So with that, I will plug my weekly newsletter, where you can sign up for it right here. I send it out every Friday to my clients. And it's something interesting I found that week, as well as whatever we've published at the firm level. But I think what I'm most interested in here is sort of like we did in that last session, is turning the tables to you to hear what people, one, think about this, two, what do you feel like you're missing, and how can the financial industry do a better job? Because as an independent firm, our goal here is to lead this thing. We do not have to answer to shareholders on Wall Street during quarterly earning reports. We get to be in this community every day. Every person at the firm has made a bet that this is a good way to do it, and we plan on being here to improve this thing and to lead the way in financial education and in decision making, rather than all of the other stuff we like to think is noise. So with that, thank you very much, but I'd love to have a Q&A with all of you if anybody has any.
In 1997 or 98, Don Webster and I started a company, and we offered financial planning benefits to our employees. Is that something you plan to do with your company?
Yeah, so on the 401k administration side, it's something we're already doing, and every engagement is different. But yes, I think the high level stuff and the education is really important. But where the rubber meets the road is always going to be one-on-one, right? Like the answer to every financial question is usually it depends.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we did, is we offered those one-on-one services to each of the employees. And they built their wealth through that program. And yet I talk to many companies today, and yet they give health benefits, but no one's giving financial planning benefits. So I think there's a huge opportunity there.
Do you want to come to my meeting with a prospect tomorrow? No, I agree. We agree with you. It's a benefit. It's a benefit, and frankly, like if you can view it through the bottom line, which is how much does it cost to replace these people that leave? But what about just morale? How do people feel?
Oh, it was great. I mean, the people that took advantage of that have gotten their kids involved in investing when they were 16 years old.
I think there's a lot of knock-on effects that come from having conversations in the open about money. One of them is that families have more productive conversations about what's important, right? It's not how much money do you have saved for them to go to college, it's the fact that that's important to you. Because guess what? They model that, right? And it doesn't have to be education. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be charitable. It could be being debt-free, right? But if you're not having that conversation, you can't expect your kids or your employees to model that and to take those values with them. They're not going to be able to guess. You need to start that conversation, and that's what we're trying to do.
Could you talk about the difference? I know a lot of the 401k companies offer education, right? And that's always something that gets included, and it's just really on the line item. When they decide to move forward with the 401k or an employee benefit. Could you talk about the difference between that education and the education that you're rolling out?
Yeah, I think so. We wanted to have a classroom professional development feel to it, and that was mentioned a couple times on the education track as well. To make better decisions as an employee and as a just as a person, someone with a family, someone trying to buy a house, whatever your goal may be, you need to really understand the framework in which you're making decisions. So a lot of that is emotional. A lot of that is psychology. You cannot learn it in a textbook. I've been lucky enough to get my degree all the way through a master's. I didn't learn any of this in a classroom, right? So part of it is the content is not engaging because it doesn't connect back to people's lives and what they care about. The other part of it is it's really boring. So ideally we can do a better job of that. But it's a great point. It's not that this doesn't exist. We just don't think it's being done well or well enough.
So you hear a lot in the financial advisor world about the difference between selling products and being an advisor. Can you give an example of what exactly that means?
Yeah, I think, so Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's partner, has a saying that's something along the lines of, if you want to understand what somebody's trying to do, understand their incentives. If you're sitting across the table, and I don't care what you're selling, if you don't understand how they're getting paid, there's a conflict of interest. So to us, we don't get paid on selling products because inherently, I can't give you the best advice. I'm a human being, right? You don't have to be a bad person. I'm just going to say, I'm going to convince myself that that's the best solution. So our goal is to take that out of the equation and align the incentives with the relationship over a period of years versus a transaction that's going to happen across the table that day. By doing that, you allow the person to think through their own decision. By the way, there's no right or wrong answer in this stuff either. It's what's right for you at that point in your life. And if you answer the question again 10 years later, the answer is probably going to be different. So again, it can't be product-oriented in that way, but the industry, the way it's evolved over time, has created that misaligned incentive, and that's where a lot of mistakes come from. That's where a lot of, frankly, expectations aren't handled properly by the person who's selling the product, right? Because something else happens than they expected to. And then they have a bad taste in their mouth. They never want to invest again, right?
We've talked many times about students and learning, and very often when you get to college, it's kind of too late to understand some of the most basic concepts. But things happening around the kitchen table are very important, those kinds of family discussions. But I also think there's some, have you thought about, we talked to Eric, I think talked a little bit about Kathy in the last session, is gamifying some of this for a younger audience, right? That really could potentially do something a little bit different, engage them in a little bit of a different way. Have you thought about kind of gamifying this?
It's such a great point. Short answer is no. But what I'd like to do is be having conversations with teachers at the NEIU, at Old Fort School District, at Scranton School District, because guess what? They are so much better at figuring out how to get the information across than I'm ever going to be. But what if we can have the teachers learn this at scale? Let them do it. But your point is a good one, and one that we'll make note of for sure.
What size companies do you support? So do you do like smaller business 401ks, or is it limited to 100 or more employees?
No, I think we always, again, we're independent, so we don't have rigid minimums, right? Like we don't turn people away. Maybe it's not we have a meeting on both sides. We call it a fit meeting, because we're really creative. But we want to make sure it works for both parties. And if it is, we make it work. And we have the ability to make it work because it's our business. So short answer is yes, absolutely. We love working with small businesses because we're a small business, right? And that allows us to have really unique conversations that somebody who's a salesperson can't have, frankly. And so yes, we do. We understand the need because we are one. But we want to make sure it's a good fit for the long term rather than, a year or two it turns out, it wasn't going to work anyway. We want to avoid those because we think that company's going to grow and they'll come back because they trusted what we said the first time.